Good evening, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you, David, for your friendship, for your support over the years, for your advice, for your thoughts, your guidance, and of course, for that very wonderful introduction. It's always great to have a trial lawyer introduce you. Ties it all together in one wonderful theme, and of course, to be here at Godosky Gentili, which had the honor of working with Tony and everyone, the whole family here for 6 years while I was in the Assembly was a phenomenal thing, and really did contribute to what I hope to continue to be able to bring to the House of Representatives in terms of advocacy and communication, how to frame a narrative, how to be as persuasive as you can possibly be, particularly given who we're dealing with, who's sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I have the honor and the privilege of representing the 8th Congressional District, one of the most diverse districts in the country. In fact, 33% of the people that I represent were born outside of the United States of America. And we know traditionally people have come from all over the world to places like Brooklyn and Queens to pursue the American dream. And so I represent African Americans, Caribbean Americans, Latinos, the Asian American community, the Reform Jewish community, the Orthodox Jewish community, Irish Americans, Italian Americans, Bangladeshi Americans, and I'm still not done. Turkish Americans, and more Russian-speaking Jewish immigrants from the former Soviet Union than any other member of Congress in the country. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries, who knew? Only in America. It's a great country, it's a great district, and the diversity of the district in many ways has really prepared me for the role that I now have the privilege of serving in as chair of the House Democratic Caucus in what is the most diverse legislative caucus in the history of the Republic. Democrat, Republican, House, Senate, the most diverse legislative caucus in the history of the Republic, and as a result of that, we of course are now the most diverse Congress, the most diverse House in the history of the country. More women serving in Congress than ever before, more African Americans, more Latinos, more Asian Americans, 2 Native American women, more members of the LGBTQ community than ever before. And so we feel as though that we in the House authentically represent the American people, and that's what the House as an institution, of course, was designed to be. And the founders were very clear that the House should reflect the passions of the people. That is why all 435 of us are elected and re-elected at the same time, and why we have 2-year terms, unlike the 4-year term of the president, the 6-year term, of course, over in the Senate. And even the House, originally in the Constitution, was the only institution that could be directly elected by the people. The Senate, of course, into the early part of the 20th century, was indirectly elected by the people, directly elected through the state legislature. The president, of course, indirectly elected by the people. I was going to say directly elected by the Russians. But you know it's currently directly elected through the Electoral College. And of course, Supreme Court justices nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. The House, the only institution originally in the Constitution directly elected by the people for a reason. And even to this very day, the House remains the only place where only the people of the country can send you to serve. Because you have a vacancy in the Senate, as we see from time to time, a governor makes that appointment. But if there's a vacancy in the House, no single individual, no executive, no legislative body, nobody can make that appointment. The people decide, as we saw, of course, with Connor Lamb's special election in Pennsylvania in 2018, where everything was on the line, and it was the people who made a decision that we're going to begin to send this country in a different direction. So we take that constitutional responsibility seriously as it relates to getting things done for everyday Americans. David spoke about sort of the kitchen table pocketbook issues that were a focus of the 2018 midterm elections, as well as our weightier constitutional responsibilities as it relates to accountability in terms of this president. And I'll just sort of end with this thought. My first responsibility as chair of the House Democratic Caucus, competitive election, and blessing to be able to be successful. And then I was told, you have to nominate Nancy Pelosi to be the next speaker on the floor of the House of Representatives on January 3rd. You're gonna be the first person to speak. That's the caucus chair's job. You gotta deliver a nominating speech on January 3rd on behalf of Nancy Pelosi. This great moment, she's gonna reascend to the speaker's chair, and we're taking the majority during a perilous time, and that's gonna be your first responsibility. So I'm in the House a few days before, thinking through my remarks, and my youngest son, Joshua, who was 14 at the time, says, "Dad, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, as the incoming chair of the House Democratic Caucus, I have this great honor of delivering a nominating speech on behalf of Nancy Pelosi. It's gonna be a big moment, you'll be there, family will be there. Do you have any advice for your father?" And without missing a beat, he said, "Dad, don't blow the moment." and I just simply want to say that as House Democrats, we understand that this is a moment that we cannot blow. And we have a responsibility to try to get things done. We're going to try to do it on prescription drug pricing. It's outrageous that we in this country pay more for life-saving prescription drugs than any other developed country in the world, more than Canada and Australia and Great Britain and Japan and France and Germany. Oftentimes we pay 4 or 5 times the amount for the same drug manufactured in the same place as a result of the anti-competitive behavior and the way the laws have been written to prohibit the federal government from negotiating lower drug prices on behalf of Medicare recipients and the American people. Is outrageous, and we're going to try to deal with that. And of course, on infrastructure, we promise to try to fix our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, airports, mass transportation system, and find a bipartisan pathway to getting something done there. And we're working with the administration to see if we can get to yes on the renegotiated NAFTA agreement, but we want to do it in a way that will bring American jobs back to places that have lost them as a result of some of the things that we've seen over the years, globalization and outsourcing of good paying American jobs. And we're committed to continuing to do the people's business in connection with our For the People agenda. But at the same token, we recognize that the House is a separate and co-equal branch of government. We don't work for this president or any president. We work for the American people. And so we have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. That is not the Nancy Pelosi playbook, or the Jerry Nadler playbook, or the Adam Schiff playbook, or the House Democratic Caucus playbook. That is the James Madison playbook. He was clear that the House is there to be a rival, his words, not mine, in the best sense of the word, rival to the executive branch. Because they didn't want a king, they didn't want a monarch, they didn't want a dictatorship, they wanted a democracy, and that is what we are going to make sure that we deliver for the American people. And so I look forward to taking some questions, and as we say in Washington, I yield back the balance of my time.